Good morning. All right, I get it, or at least I got it last night. A lot of emotion, a lot of negative feelings. 49ers fans were wound up. The hype train had built over the 6 straight wins. They lose a brutal one, 13-3 to the Seattle Seahawks with a lot at stake, but I think you have to wash the emotion away very quickly because the truth of the larger matter is that the 49ers finished a highly successful regular season, 12-5, and they find out their playoff opponent today. And big picture is always the way that you have to go if you're talking strategy in the NFL. That's the way that the 49ers have to act in the building because they have a massive game to play next weekend. Today, they're going to find out whether they play Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Obviously, Saturday would be the dreaded scenario. They need rest right now, as much of it as possible, because they need players back. The bottom line is that yesterday they played a Seahawks team that's put up historically good analytics this year, one of the top 10 DVOAs ever. And they had to do it, A, with the depleted defense, obviously. No Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Michael Williams. By the end of the game, they were down to Garrett Wallow and Eric Kendricks playing linebacker. But they also had to do it without Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall. And that flipped the game from the result 4 months prior in week one. So we're going to break this down. Then we're going to talk about the playoff possibilities, what to watch today. There are 4 potential opponents for the 49ers in the wild card round. It's either going to be Philadelphia, Chicago, Tampa, or Carolina. That's all going to be determined over the course of the next 8 hours or so. We'll know by probably 4:35 p.m. Pacific tonight whom the 49ers are playing. The schedule should come out shortly thereafter, probably after the Sunday night game. We'll learn the actual time schedule, but we'll know the opponent by 5 p.m. or so today. But the 49ers beat the Seahawks in week one, 17-13. They beat them without running the football. Like, they were 3 yards a carry in week one. It was a defensive slog, but they found a way to grit through and get it done. Yesterday's game was not all that different in that the 49ers, again, averaged only about 3 yards a carry. They didn't run the ball well. And again, they held Seattle to 13 points. They got lucky to hold Seattle to 13 points. It was a much more dominant defensive performance for understandable reasons back in week one. But still, those 2 parameters were the same. The thing that flipped between week one and week 18 were the absences of Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall. And those severely compromised the 49ers' ability to threaten and attack the Seahawks downfield. Ricky Pearsall literally flipped the game in week one. The 49ers, with Brock Purdy, hit him on a deep pass over Reek Woolen, 30-plus yards on the game-winning drive that took that game from a 49ers losing probability to a 49ers winning probability. Pearsall's presence literally flipped that game. First drive of the game in week one, it was Purdy to Ricky Pearsall on the first longer third down of the season over the middle on the little skinny post route that set the 49ers up to finish off a 14-play march that went 95 yards. They didn't have that yesterday. They didn't have an ability to threaten the Seattle Seahawks downfield. And you saw it with the limitations of that offense. There's a reason why the 49ers went to hell and back negotiating with Brandon Ayuk in the 2024 offseason. There's a reason why they used the first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall. It's because the wide receiver position in this modern league is extremely important, and the 49ers are down to bare bones there. They don't have speed there. They don't have separation ability there. They're playing guys out of position. They needed Ayuk. They needed Ricky Pearsall. They had neither of those 2 guys last night against an elite Seattle defense, and it absolutely showed, especially since they also couldn't run. On top of that, Trent Williams is one of the best to ever do it at the left tackle position. Not having him there was obviously massive against an elite Seattle defensive front. There's a reason why I said another thing with Ricky Pearsall, that one might have taken the 49ers a little off guard because, he practiced all 3 days of the week heading into the Seahawks game. He didn't exit the Bears game with an injury. There had seemed to be an assumption, at least from the outside, and I know the 49ers wanted to keep a lot of this close to the vest, but there seemed to be an assumption, at least from the outside, that Ricky would be able to go in this game. You know, I assumed that he'd be able to go for this game, but then it came out 90 minutes before that Ricky Pearsall wasn't able to go for this game. And I made an emergency video from Levi Stadium yesterday, and I said, this changes the math. Anybody who thought that this was going to be an easy win, anybody who thought that there was some kind of wide path to victory against the Seattle defense that was in the top 3 of the league, against an offense that, wasn't great, but we all had seen the 49ers defense in the weeks prior and the season prior to this game. This 49ers defense was not really slowing anybody. No weakness on the Seattle special teams. Anybody who thought that yesterday would present a wide path to victory for the 49ers was deluding themselves. This was going to be a narrow path to victory, and they were going to have to follow a very specific script if they were going to get there. And as soon as Pearsall was ruled out before the game, that's what I said. The math wasn't mathing for me for the 49ers. I didn't think they were going to win after Pearsall was ruled out. It's always possible. There's always a way to make it work. That's what week 5 should have taught us against the Los Angeles Rams. The 49ers had a skeleton crew, and they found a way to get it done in LA. But if you face those kind of odds, and I'm not saying they were that long yesterday, but they were fairly long yesterday without Ricky Pearsall and Trent Williams. When you face those kind of odds, you have almost no margin for error. You have to get the greasy plays to go your way, and you can't blow the obvious opportunities. And the greasy plays outside of the 2 missed field goals did not go the 49ers' way yesterday, and they blew their opportunities. They didn't execute. I mean, we could go back to 4 plays in this game. You go back to the Christian McCaffrey drop. I think that's the obvious one. That would have made it 13-10 had they been able to score a touchdown there. Instead, it turns into an interception, so it stayed 13-3, and it was essentially over there. You can go back to the Yetur Gross-Matos failure to pick up the fumble. That would have allowed the 49ers to have a shot to tie the game at 10-10 deep in Seattle territory. You can go back to the 3rd and 17 run from Kenneth Walker III that turned into a 20-yard gain and a first down. I mean, unacceptable from the 49ers defense. There are people talking about the linebacker position and injuries there. Tatum Bethune and D. Winters are hurt. We're going to be monitoring their status to see if they can come back for a potential playoff game. But Bethune was still in the game when that happened. I mean, Bethune and Jair Brown could not make the play on that 20-yard run. Absolutely unacceptable from the 49ers defense. But, I even go back. I know I'm listing the pillar plays that caused this to sink for the 49ers yesterday, but I have to say that we knew entering this game that the defense was a gas can that could give up a 3rd and long on the ground at any given time, that it could be torched for yardage as long as they were opportunistic and found a way to lower the point total to a reasonable amount. As long as they gave the 49ers offense the opportunity to rebut, shield them. I mean, that's the strategy that we had talked about all year about the 49ers moving as far to the right as possible on the XY axis while keeping the defense afloat. So, the 3rd and 17, disgusting play, bad effort. I thought that the 49ers just mentally checked out on that play. But still, the overarching reason, top level of blame for the 49ers loss, I look at the loss of firepower on offense, because I always look at this through the lens of the offense has to be the locomotive to pull this train. That's just the way that the team is set up this year. And the inability to separate and create magic downfield without Ricky Pearsall, without Trent Williams blocking at left tackle. Austin Pleasance got beat at the end of the game, and Brock Purdy suffered a stinger. The 49ers are lucky that it wasn't more. They'll hope that he still feels okay today and is ready to go this week. But the loss of downfield credibility because of those 2 absences, Pearsall and Williams, were the flip point between what happened in week 1 and what happened in week 18. It made the 49ers walk a path so narrow, a tightrope act between two skyscrapers so narrow that they fell off. And probably the symbolic moment of truly falling off was when Christian McCaffrey couldn't hold on to the pass. Boye Mafe got the tip. I get it. It wasn't an easy play, but it was one that Christian McCaffrey makes 99 times out of 100. Mafe tipped the ball, but Purdy still got it out there. It wasn't tipped enough to send it way off course. It still hit McCaffrey in the hands and the chest. He was thinking about turning up field and scoring. He was unable to make the play. It happens, and that's where the 49ers are at right now. So we need to move forward to talking about how the 49ers can regroup, because large picture right now is that this team finished a highly successful regular season 12-5. They lost to a very good opponent last night. They ran out of magic. I mean, it would have taken some magic. As I just said, they needed to beat the math last night after Ricky Pearsall was ruled out. It wasn't just Pearsall out. It was Bosa. It was Warner. It was Trent Williams. Brandon Ayuk wasn't available. I mean, they were down 5 A-list players. If you don't count Pearsall as an A-list player, I get it. So they're down 4 A-list players. But it was going to take the 49ers doing something extraordinary again to overcome unfavorable math, and they didn't do it. They lost 13-3. It happens, especially to a team that's as beaten up as San Francisco. What's also happened is that the 49ers won 6 of 7 to finish 12-5 and put themselves into the playoff picture. I wrote about this on the San Francisco Standard. All the ways the 49ers flaws were exposed and what this means for the playoffs. The overarching look that I take is on the offense. But I know that we had charted a strategic path for the 49ers that involved a defensive improvement surrounding a potential return of Fred Warner, maybe as soon as the divisional round. The reason that yesterday's game would have been so beneficial to have if you're the 49ers is because they would have been able to rest this next week and then not play again until January 17th at home in the divisional round. And Fred Warner theoretically could have returned for that game. I know that the reports have said NFC Championship, but I think that Fred wants to come back for the divisional round. But it could have been a home return for Fred Warner following a bye week, rested 49ers defense. And we've talked so much about that 49ers defense needing that extra nudge of productivity that Fred Warner obviously could give it. That was a clear path for San Francisco if they could earn it last night to the Super Bowl. Now they have to go the hard way. That's all that they were talking about in the locker room. It's like, well, nothing else has gone right this season. We have to embrace the hard way moving forward. And that's what it's going to have to be. They're not going to be able to live on the luxury of a bye, live on the luxury of waiting for Fred Warner to return. They're going to have to take the starting point that they were at, like we discussed all regular season, and apply it to the wild card round of the postseason. And that starting point was, this defense isn't good because they're so injured. The offense needs to hog the ball. The offense needs to shield the defense. And the special teams needs to probably provide the winning difference in some of these games. That's the math for the 49ers moving forward. And it requires, as last night showed us, it absolutely requires Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall being out on the field. They were able to get the job done the week before against the Chicago Bears without George Kittle. It was very, very narrow, but they still lit up the scoreboard against the worst defense. But against some of these better defenses, and the Seahawks are one of the best in the game, you need your left tackle. You need your wide receiver. Was I surprised that Kyle Shanahan didn't adapt in a more drastic way yesterday? Perhaps. I thought, okay, if Ricky Pearsall is out, maybe they go 2 tight end. Maybe they ride the hot hand with Jake Tonjes and obviously add George Kittle back in there since he's ready to go. But Tonjes didn't really play, and it was only Kittle. And, I thought that with the lack of receiving firepower, that could have been a way that the 49ers caught the Seahawks off guard. But it seemed to me again that the 49ers were surprised by the Pearsall unavailability. There seemed to be a real degree of surprise, and one of the pieces of evidence for that, downstream circumstantial evidence for that, is the fact that they didn't go to two tight end stuff. That it seemed that they had worked with Pearsall at receiver over the course of the week, and then when he was unable to go for the 49ers on the short week on Saturday, they're almost stuck into the receiver-centric game plan, and then they were out of luck. I mean, there were a couple plays that they ran in that first half where they were trying to reverse the math, the play fake on 4th and 1, and the protection didn't hold up long enough on that 4th and 1, so Purdy couldn't come back around and find the outlet man Kittle on the right side because the Seahawks just collapsed the pocket. And then there's the double pitch play where they tried to find Christian McCaffrey, and they did. But, when you use up a double pitch, crazy trick play, you want it to go for more than 5 or 6 yards. And they didn't even convert first down on that drive. That was the drive where Eddie Pinheiro kicked the field goal for San Francisco. But when you burn those kind of bullets, you need 7. They needed 7 on that drive. They needed 7 on the drive where McCaffrey dropped the pass that turned into an interception, and it didn't work out for the 49ers. Anyway, it's time to look at what's happening today around the NFL to set the table, because the 49ers need to turn the page quick. I think their fan base should probably turn the page quick. They've won 6 of 7. They're in the playoffs. They have a chance to give younger guys invaluable experience. Speaking of that, Upton Stout, I think, has really blossomed over the course of this season. Stout, as far as the 2025 rookie class goes, he's the closest to becoming a star. I mean, the guy is a firecracker. He was good in coverage yesterday. He blanketed Cooper Kupp on that first 4th down. He was hitting hard in the backfield. I don't think nickel was a liability at all for the 49ers. Safety has been and remains a liability for the 49ers. That's a position they're probably going to have to address in the offseason, because despite the one good coverage play they got from Jair Brown yesterday on JSN, helping out with Renardo Green on the go ball in the end zone. Aside from that, especially against the run, safety was a huge issue. I don't think that Malik Mustafa is back to what he was explosiveness-wise before the ACL tear that happened in the Cardinals season finale. It was exactly a year ago last year. So early January, week 18. Safety's an issue. Obviously, linebacker is thin. They're down to Wallow and Eric Kendricks right now, but that's understandable that there have been a lot of injuries there. I think safety is the biggest weakness on this defense, and the defensive line. It's really, really hard to make up for the losses of guys like Nick Bosa, who you're paying the most out of anybody on that defense. Anyway, it's time to look at the schedule today, because the 49ers have pushed this through to the playoffs, and today's the day that's going to determine who they play. And there are several different variables to keep track of. This is going to be a little bit complicated, so I just wanted to show the entire schedule to help people understand where the 49ers are at, what you should watch. In 50 minutes, you're going to see the Falcons and the Saints start. Why is that important? Well, not because the 49ers might play either the Falcons or the Saints. Both of those teams are eliminated, but because that particular game, if the Atlanta Falcons win, will determine who. Well, I mean, that particular game is going to determine who wins the NFC South, because if the Falcons win, they force a 3-way tie atop the NFC South, and that would mean that the Carolina Panthers are the NFC South champions. So if the Saints win, and the Falcons are favored in this game, if the Saints win, it's going to be Tampa winning the NFC South. If the Falcons win, it is going to be the Carolina Panthers winning the NFC South. I tried to make this as simple as possible in a tweet yesterday that I'm going to put up on the screen here. So give me a brief second. The It's either going to be the number 5 or the number 6 seed for the 49ers today, with the number 6 being the most likely. The Rams game against the Cardinals at 1:25 Pacific time today is going to determine whether or not the 49ers are the 5 or the 6. All right, I've got it here for you guys. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to understand when you have it all in writing in front of you. So if the Rams beat Arizona, the 49ers will be number 6. And obviously the Rams at home are favored over the Cardinals, but the Rams are not playing their best football right now. If Arizona beats the Rams in the afternoon, the 49ers will be the number 5. As the 6, the 49ers would head to the number 3. That would be either Philly or Chicago. Likely Philly, though, because Philly is currently in the number 3. They're probably going to stay there, but it's not a guarantee. Philly is resting some starters against Washington today, but they can still win because it's Washington, and Washington is also playing a lot of backups. They've been really beaten up this year. So it is possible that Philly wins at home against Washington, and it is possible that Chicago loses at home against Detroit, but Chicago is playing its starters. Detroit still probably has some juice. Maybe they want to have a good closing note to the season. So I don't think that you could rule out Detroit winning a game against the Chicago Bears. So if Chicago wins and Philly loses, then Chicago will. If Chicago wins and sorry. If that happens, if Detroit wins and Philly wins, other way around. Detroit wins and Philly wins, then what you'll see is Philly moving up to the 2, Chicago dropping to the 3, and then the number 6 seed 49ers would head to play the Bears instead of the Eagles. But either way, if the Rams beat Arizona later, it's either Philly or Chicago. Those are 2 much tougher opponents than Carolina or Tampa. If Arizona beats the Rams, the 49ers will be number 5, and that Falcons game will determine who they play. So there's a lot of conflicting variables here, corresponding variable, whatever you want to call it. The number 6 seed contingency depends on the Eagles and Bears games. Those are both in the afternoon. The number 5 contingency depends on the Atlanta game, which is in the morning. Bottom line is that because the Rams-Arizona game is not until the afternoon, most of everything here is not going to be determined for the 49ers until that PM window. I think out of the 4 potential playoff opponents that the 49ers can get, the most concerning draw would be the Philadelphia Eagles, because they can essentially imprint the same type of trouble on San Francisco as the Seattle Seahawks. The Eagles have a very good defense. They can theoretically slow the 49ers run game, stop the 49ers run game the way that Seattle did. And they can run the football on offense. And the 49ers gave up 180 yards on the ground yesterday. They did not have any control of the proceedings because of that. There's a reason why I say that stopping the run is the very most important thing that you can do as a defense. And it's because if you can't stop the run, then there's no chance that you can control game flow, especially if you can't run the football yourself on the other end. Yesterday, the 49ers had 12 carries. Meanwhile, the Seahawks were able to get up to near 40 carries and 180 yards on the ground. Game flow, arm wrestling match completely in favor of Seattle. If there's a team in the wild card round that can replicate that dynamic against the 49ers, it's probably the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that they can most. We've already seen a 49ers-Bears matchup. I'm not sure that the Bears can stop the 49ers run game. Hell, who knows if the Eagles would be able to completely stop the 49ers run game if Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall are back. But just as far as what wild card team is best cut out to shorten the game against the 49ers, just bleed life out of the offense, handcuff the offense, it would be the Eagles. The 49ers ran only 42 plays yesterday. They went 2 of 9 on third down. They're unable to move the chains. They're unable to get any sort of running rhythm going. It was a game where the offense just was fighting without its arms. And it was very, very quickly subdued. They scored 3 points. It was the fewest points the 49ers had scored since Kyle Shanahan's very first game in 2017 as the coach of the 49ers. That also was Christian McCaffrey's first career NFL game. They lost 23-3 to the Carolina Panthers. Now, here's what the one stat, and I put this up here at the top of my article on the San Francisco Standard. This was remarkable, and this illustrated just how big of an issue the 49ers were facing against that Seattle defense with the personnel that they had available offensively. The Seahawks did not run base defense on a single snap. The 49ers had only 42 offensive plays, which is not a lot. But out of all 42 of those plays, the Seahawks never once strayed away from the nickel or the dime package. So base defense is when you have 3 linebackers, a third heavier linebacker to combat the run. Nickel is when you switch out one of those linebackers for a defensive back. Dime is when you switch out both of those linebackers, or two of the 3 linebackers, for defensive backs so you could better defend the pass. The Seahawks showed up and played nickel and dime the entire game, 100% of snaps, and still completely stonewalled the 49ers run game. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL. Normally, teams have to bring a little bit more weight onto the field to stop the run game. But the Seahawks were able to have their cake and eat it too by running nickel and dime the whole game and still stopping the run. So there's nothing that Brock Purdy can do at that point, especially since he doesn't have his 2 best receivers in Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk to try to beat multiple defensive backs downfield. Plus, he doesn't have his left tackle, so he's getting crunched by the Seattle pass rush. I mean, this was an absolute formula for disaster for the 49ers offense. And the reason I say that the Eagles might be able to replicate a little bit of the same is because I just saw Philadelphia the other week go into Buffalo, and Josh Allen and the Bills were shut out for 3+ quarters of that game. They finally scored at the end, and I think Buffalo ended it with 12 points in that game. So Buffalo only managed 12 against Philadelphia at home. Reminiscent of the 49ers yesterday. I mean, San Francisco might have had 10 yesterday had Christian McCaffrey not dropped that ball that turned into an interception. Maybe if the 49ers don't go for it on the 4th down in the first half and kick a field goal instead, that it's something like a 13-point output for the 49ers. But a lot would have had to have gone right, which went wrong for them to just scratch out that amount of points. It seems to me that the Eagles would be a team that could similarly stifle an offense that can't run the football, regardless of who the quarterback is. It could be Purdy, it could be Josh Allen. If you don't have the ingredients for separation downfield, if you don't have the ingredients for baseline protection up front, and the 49ers didn't have either of those two without Ricky Pearsall and without Trent Williams, you're going to be in big trouble. So getting Pearsall and Williams back is of paramount importance. Shanahan said that yesterday was going to be tough for them to come back, but he also said that Sunday would have been much more likely. So the short week, that's a point of frustration for the 49ers for sure. Probably would have been much better off if this wasn't a short week, if this was a Sunday game. But you got to play the schedule that they put in front of you. And now the look forward has to be on maximal rest time, because it's not just the Pearsall and the Trent Williams injuries that the 49ers are dealing with. They've added Bethune, they've added Winters, the 2 linebackers, to that injury list. They've added Luke Gifford with the quad injury. That's why they were down to Garrett Wallow and to Eric Kendricks at the end of that game. They want to play this wild card game as late as possible next weekend, so that they have as much rest time as possible to put as competent of a roster as possible out on that field. If you have any questions about the 49ers and their injury situation and just their roster situation, let me know. Maybe even the schedule situation. I'm going to get the 90-man roster out right now so we can make the updates with the health statuses of the 49ers, charting the way forward. Here it is. I'm not going to put an injury shading on Brock Purdy until we hear a little bit more from Kyle Shanahan. He said that he checked out fine and would have come back into the game. It was a left shoulder stinger for Brock Purdy as he got crunched there at the very end by two Seattle defensive linemen, including Leonard Williams. That was a play that put an exclamation mark. It scored just how much the 49ers missed Trent Williams. The look at the depth chart here. We'll keep Trent Williams obviously in the injury shading. We have to add the two linebackers, Tatum Bethune and D. Winters. There you go. We have to take Upton Stout off of this. And we have to add Ricky Pearsall back into the injury shade. Oops. Got the text wrong there. All right. So these are, these are the two you absolutely have to get back for the playoffs. I don't see the 49ers beating a single playoff team without a space-making wide receiver and without Trent Williams at tackle. Maybe we saw him beat the Bears without Williams. I get it, but the margin was so narrow, and the 49ers had the home field in that game. Now they have to take the hard path. I think you need both Trent and Ricky back. On defense, Keon White did return for the 49ers, so we could remove him from the injury shading here. White did return, but it's Bethune and Winters out, and Shanahan said that their availability for next week could be compromised. So Wallow and Gifford, too, we can put them in there. They're probably going to have to call, fully sign Eric Kendricks to the active roster. He was coming up from the practice squad for the past 3 games, and he's available to play Mike, Will, or Sam linebacker. 49ers might have to just plug him into the mic if Tatum Bethune is unavailable to go. But Kendricks, Wallow, Curtis Robinson, those are probably your linebackers if both Bethune and Winters and Luke Gifford on top of that are unavailable for the 49ers moving forward. It's brutal, but it is what it is. And I will say that even with Bethune out there on that field, the 49ers gave up that 3rd and 17 run. So this defense was not a world-beating defense before. It's not going to be a world-beating defense after. Even if they do return Fred Warner as soon as the divisional round, that would obviously mean they have to win in the wild card round. It's not going to be a world-beating defense then because of some of the pass rushing issues and because of the safety issues they have. Returning Warner would give the 49ers an obvious boost that they could really use right now. But I think that the formula for the 49ers still very clearly hinges on this team shielding the defense by hogging the football on offense, something that they've done so well over most of this 2025-2026 season, something that they had done spectacularly well for weeks. They had won 6 straight games with the number 1 offense in the league until it all came crashing down against the Seattle Seahawks last night, when they couldn't convert those 3rd downs, when they couldn't run the football, when they couldn't separate downfield, when the absences of Ricky Pearsall and Trent Williams so obviously stomach punched this offense and showed us whom the 49ers absolutely have to return, especially if they play one of these stronger defenses in the first wild card round of the playoffs. Now, there is a chance that if the Rams lose today against Arizona, that's why George Kittle kept on saying, go Cardinals. He wants Budda Baker to have 3 pick sixes against Matthew Stafford today. There is a real chance that it's not a big one, but there's a chance that the 49ers hop up into that number 5 seed. And if that happens and it's either Carolina or Tampa, then I think it's a much easier path for San Francisco. Out of the 4 potential opponents, Philly, Chicago, Carolina, Tampa, 3 don't have great defenses. The Eagles, the most likely opponent, they have a really good defense. So that would be a massive, massive challenge for the 49ers, especially since Philadelphia can also run the ball very effectively on the other end. But if the Rams somehow lose today and it's either Carolina or Tampa, and I think Carolina is the likelier of those two teams because the Falcons will probably beat the Saints, but we'll see. I mean, everything seems to be a toss-up in some way in this modern NFL filled with parity. If it ends up being Carolina or Tampa, I think the 49ers will have a much, much easier time moving the football than if they have to go to Philly. If they have to go to Chicago, that would be another permutation, obviously, with the Detroit Bears game and with the Eagles and the Commanders playing today. Chicago could line up to be another shootout. That could also depend on weather. Probably icy in Chicago at this time of the year. So many different possibilities on the table. The key for the 49ers, though, is to focus on themselves right now. Find that regroup. Make sure that you get Williams and Pearsall back because that is absolutely mandatory. And then figure out whatever you can scrounge together on defense. And, I have to say that they did get lucky yesterday defensively to only give up those 13 points. There were some ghastly plays. I think that the run defense was horrific on the Charbonnet touchdown run. Jair Brown just got sucked up into the linebacker. You got to shed it got sucked up into the tight end. You've got to be able to shed a tight end a little bit more effectively than that. Mustafa took a bad angle on Charbonnet near the end zone, so that didn't even give the 49ers a red zone stop opportunity. There was the 3rd and 17 was inexcusable. There were some pass interference penalties that prolonged drives for the Seattle Seahawks. I think that the 49ers are playing this off coverage way too often. They had some more pass rushing juice yesterday. They actually got to Darnold a couple of times. But even when they dialed up some big blitzes, Darnold was able to find guys on underneath slant patterns because the coverage from Renardo Green gave such a big cushion. And at some point, the 49ers, in games like yesterday's, where it was clear that everything was going to be a slog for the offense because of the injuries on that side of the football, the defense, I think, needed to take a few more chances. They couldn't just give up some of this cushion yard underneath, because what that allowed was for Seattle to ensure that even though they scored only 13 points, they possessed the ball for 37 or 38 minutes. They did what the 49ers had done to them back in week 1. They held the ball for 20 plus more plays than the 49ers. They gave themselves those running opportunities to ensure that they had a complete stranglehold on the game. And the 49ers never really created a takeaway opportunity for themselves. The Seahawks created one takeaway opportunity when Darnold tripped and fumbled, and the 49ers obviously didn't capitalize on it when Gross Matos couldn't grab the football. But yesterday was a game where the 49ers needed to manufacture something schematically, and I don't think they ever came close to doing that against Seattle. So, as far as this defense goes, we know who they are, but in games where they're not shielded, they have to be something more. And the only way that I see that happening is if Fred Warner returns and gives the 49ers a little extra oomph in that opportunism department. They're almost certainly not going to get him back next week, though, so the path has to go through what the 49ers offense can accomplish as far as shielding that defensive side of the ball. Falcons and Saints will be starting in about 30 minutes. The Falcons are 3.5-point favorites there. So, but that's only for the 4-5 contingency. Then the actual must-see TV begins at 1:00 this afternoon. And there's going to be a lot to watch, so I hope that you have Red Zone for that. And the main one, obviously, the main pivot point is going to be that Rams-Cardinals game. That one could be over quickly. Maybe the Rams just start pouring it on soon, but LA has been going through a weird stretch. It's going to be fascinating to see how they enter the playoffs. For now, you can take a look at all the 49ers flaws, what they have to fix moving forward. up on the San Francisco Standard. I have the article ready for you right here. What it all means for the playoffs. We'll put the link into the description for you guys. Bottom line, though, is that they need talent at the X receiver position back. They need talent at left tackle back, and then they just need to re-adhere to the formula that got them to 12-5 and what was a highly successful regular season. A lot of magic for the 49ers over the course of the past 4 months, starting with how they won in Seattle, going through that week 5 win at LA, then the 6-game win streak that put them into that position last night. What you want to do, especially in a year where you're rehauling a lot of the roster, you're bringing a lot of youth in, you want to find a way to compete, find a way to play the massive games that the 49ers did last night. Those are invaluable from an experience standpoint. Upton Stout is going to benefit from that game. Other young players are going to benefit from that game. Brock Purdy, still a young player, is going to benefit from that game, playing with nothing offensively, no ability to challenge downfield because of the lack of separation and the lack of protection. Those are all growing experiences for the 49ers. They earned the right to play in that massive game last night. They came up short because they didn't have the firepower to get it done, but now they circle the wagons. They hope to get some of that firepower back, and they're going to try to go the hard way through the NFC playoffs. And, one interesting thing about this bracket, the 49ers, the worst they're going to be is number 6. That means that there still is the possibility of a home playoff game on the table. Wouldn't be until the NFC Championship, but there is going to be a team seeded worse than them, and that is the Green Bay Packers. And there is so much parity right now in the NFL picture. That's something that we've been talking about all year, that, I wouldn't put it past the Packers to win 2 playoff games. And so if the 49ers can scrounge their way to a couple wins, all of a sudden the NFC title game can be at home. 2021, the 49ers actually faced a harder path because they were the 7 seed, so they had to play the 2 and then the 1. They had to beat the Cowboys and then the Green Bay Packers to make it to the NFC Championship, where they finally lost to the Los Angeles Rams. They ran out of gas by that point. This year, the Packers are going to be locked into that 7. We'll see if the 49ers are the 5 or the 6, depending on the Rams game today. But I was just thinking ahead. Green Bay as the 7 is going to play the 2. So that's going to be either Chicago or Philadelphia. It would not shock me to see Green Bay be either of those 2 teams, especially with Jordan Love back. And then obviously everything gets reseeded after that first round, but it's 1 game away. If the 49ers can find a way to win the wild card, it'd be 1 upset away. And we've seen crazier upsets this season, even from a return to Levi's for the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying any of this is likely. I'm saying that there's a lot of parity in the NFL. A whole new season begins for the 49ers next week. They did their best to push this to a chance to get that coveted 1 seed, but they ran out of gas. They ran out of magic. They ran out of gas. They have no reason to hold their heads right now. They have to hold their heads up high right now. They have no reason to hang their heads right now because Seattle was just the more stocked, healthier, better team yesterday. And the Seahawks are 14-3. They're analytically one of the best teams that we've seen in this modern era because they're playing all 3 phases of the game so soundly. The 49ers had a very, very narrow tightrope path to victory yesterday, and they were unable to follow it. So now they've got to walk another tightrope through the NFC playoffs, and today's going to be very exciting because we get to find out exactly who the 49ers will play, and we get to find out exactly how the 49ers will have an opportunity to further forge themselves throughout the playoffs. The goal for months in this reset year was for San Francisco to make the playoffs, to finish what I think I predicted 11-6. They ended up finishing 12-5. They've earned a spot at the table. They've earned a spot in the dance, and now they can move forward, trying to figure out how to scratch and claw their way moving forward. And win or loss, they're going to gain some invaluable playoff experience as they set the table for an offseason where they can spend some money, where they can improve the roster. There's going to be a lot available to the 49ers to make this team better. Remember that the Rams, when they ran a similar reset in 2023, they also scratched and clawed their way into the playoffs. It was invaluable for them. They ended up losing to the Detroit Lions. It was a close game in the playoffs, but the Rams were able to turn around and win a playoff game the next year in 2024. And now the Rams, I know that they've suffered a couple brutal losses late, but the Rams are one of the NFC favorites entering this postseason of 2025, or technically 2026. So it's all a process. Fans should appreciate the process. Yesterday was the time for big disappointment. Today is the time to start looking forward toward a postseason run for the 49ers. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button. I'm going to go get some coffee before I watch these football games. Everybody sign up for the Standard, and we will talk to you soon.